Thank you for joining today. We will discuss what is money, chapter 2, um, from this teaching called Mi Primer Bitcoin, and it's basically Spanish for my first Bitcoin, and we will kind of discuss this. Essentially, uh, before we dive in, we want to make sure that we understand what money is, at least from a conceptual perspective. We know that it is something that we use to make payments. That's the definition that maybe a little kid would give you, because that's based on their understanding of how they go about life. They just pay for things, and that's just what money is useful for. Okay. And as you keep asking more and more people, they'll give you a slightly different answer as you go. Now, essentially, the question that we're trying to really get to the bottom of is what makes money money? We really all know how to use it, but we fail or we just never question how it works. And this is what we're going to try to discuss in this class here. We basically want to get to the bottom of what is money and what makes money money. How many forms do money possess? Um, and we will basically answer these questions by the end of this class. Okay, so essentially, the government and authorities they issue money. They control the money. Wherever you live around the world, the money that you're using is being created by your government. They allow you to use money, essentially, right? But it's much more than just something that's physical. It's something that you're using to exchange goods and services, things around the world. It's a little more than that, actually, than just a medium of exchange. It's also a store of value, but we'll see that in just a moment. It's a universal language, essentially. Okay, it allows us to really exchange things with people and trade around the world, even if we don't speak the same language. Okay, basically, some people say we talk money because it's another form of language. Okay, it's a social contract. It allows us to really exchange goods and services without having to relying on bartering. Bartering is when we exchange things. It's an old school, I don't know if I should say old school, but it's an old way to really exchange uh, goods and services before money was actually invented, right? So basically, that's what bartering is. It's when we exchange things. Now, money itself doesn't have it doesn't have any power on its own. It's not something that we can consume. It's just a tool. It's not something that we can consume to make ourselves feel good, essentially like food or something like that. It's just a commodity that we trade for one thing, and or another. So without that tool, we will have a very hard time to exchange the things that we want to exchange in a society. That's all it really is. Now, every single day we are making transactions. We are exchanging goods and services and between one or more people. So when you go to Walmart, wherever you are, when you go to the grocery store, you are able to purchase things. But as you're purchasing things, you have to understand that you're creating a transaction. It's just a transaction. You are just like this picture on my screen. You are really exchanging something for another, right? There are many different types of transactions. Some transactions are easy, such as the picture, and some others are very complex. And some transactions are conducted in person, over the phone, online, by different types of institutions, individuals, businesses, financial institutions. At the end of the day, they all exchange something for another, right? So money is facilitating that trade. Okay. Now we're going to look at the function of money. Okay. And there are three functions that you need to really understand. Most people really ignore this completely, and me included, for a long time. I want to say way too long. The first function is actually store of value. This is very, very important because it allows the money to keep its value over time. Okay, I'm going to give you a few examples in just a moment. The second thing is medium of exchange. That is basically the definition of something that we're using as money that is serving the purpose to be used in exchange of something else. So to be used as a medium to be able to determine how we're going to exchange something for something else. It defines the parameters, it defines all the settings on what the contract is between this exchange for this transaction. And the third category here, the third function, is called unit of account. And we'll talk about this in just a moment. It's basically when you are able to account for things in that money. You are able to see and quickly value the worth of certain goods and services versus others in that unit. Okay, I know that those are words that we never really understand as normal people around the world for the most part, but it's very important to really understand that. But we'll talk about this in just a moment. So basically, money should maintain its value over time. It should really, really, really maintain its value over time. This is what a store of value is. If your money that you're using does not hold the same value that you acquired it for over a long period of time, that money has been devalued. It's basically, its value is lost over time. Basically, you're losing money. Basically, you're bleeding money, essentially. The value of that money that you have lost its juice, right? And it's not desirable anymore. You want to get rid of it as quickly as possible because you know that over time it will lose its value. This is exactly what's happening in countries in Africa, where, for example, or Latin America, where the money has lost so much value over a long period of time that the people are actually using the money for other purposes than the actual money. So they're not storing their value in that money. Okay, so the time is very essential to be considered a store of value for money. Okay, now the second property of money that we discussed earlier is the medium of exchange. That means that we're using the money as a tool, as you can see on my screen, to exchange bread for steak, for example, right? Or vice versa. Either way, the money is the tool that will be able to be used instead of exchanging the steak and the bread directly between me and you. We will use the money in between to evaluate how much each things are worth, and we will create a transaction. We will create a trade. It's a whole lot more efficient. That's what medium of exchange is for a property of money. The third property is called unit of account. Unit of account means that basically it's a standardized way to understand value of everything that is surrounding us. We are using that, it's like a measuring stick almost, right? It allows people to really compare things and prices of different goods and services and things around us, and services and jobs and different things. Anything that you can name, that people are ready to trade, that will be traded using a money that has a strong unit of account, or a very good unit of account property. So that means we can use, for example, the US dollar. As you can see on my screen, you know that the soccer ball, for example, cost around $29. It's just an example. And you know that a cell phone, at least at the time, cost $350. That is a unit of account. We're using the dollar as a unit of account here in this case. Okay, so that's pretty much what it is. Those are the interesting different properties of money. Something that makes money very solid, at least as we hope, depending on the money. Those three properties are essential to really make the best money the best money. Okay, all right. So Basically, without money, we would not be able to really buy and sell things around us in a very easy way. It would be very difficult to develop society and go very fast and build things that are better. Okay, so those are the different properties of money: store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of account. Very easy. Now, this is the first part. The second part of the money, at least the first point here, we define the money, what it is, why do we need money? And the second part was the different three types of the three different um, the functions of money, the three different functions of money. And now we are going to discuss the properties of money. And there are about 6 or 7 different properties of money. And those properties are actually uh, very important because they define whether a money is actually good money or is it a bad money. Okay, and you have to understand that those are the big criterias that we're going to measure. Anything that wants to compete for good money, we're going to measure those in terms of these 6 characteristics. Also, the first one is durability. The money that you're trying to introduce to the system, for example, paper money, for example, fiat money as we call it. If you're trying to introduce fiat money to the world, which we already have right now, obviously, but you will need to test that paper for durability. It needs to be something that's very durable. If that if that turns bad over time after 1 week, that's not a good money. Okay, but you already know paper money is fairly durable. Divisibility is another one. Divisibility is essentially the fact that the question, can you divide this money in multiple pieces and and add them together to make a bigger piece? And is it possible to divide that money? If it's a banana, if it's anything, a tree, is it possible to quickly divide that and divide that for to be able to buy smaller things or bigger things to assemble those things? That's what divisibility is. The third characteristic is portability. Is the money that you're trying to use heavy, like gold, or is it very light, like fiat money, like this paper money that we get from the ATM, for example? That is a big characteristic. It needs to be very light, very portable. The acceptability characteristic is pretty easy and kind of self-explanatory. If the money that you're using is not acceptable somewhere else, that is not a good money. Okay, so that is pretty much the problem that we're having with every country. Every country wants to have sovereignty over uh, their um, their citizens, and they decree the money for the country that every citizen is living under. So that money is only valid within the country that you're living in. So that acceptability is pretty much limited, as you can imagine, right, to the country that you live in, right? Now, the other characteristic is called scarcity. Scarcity means rare. So is the money that you're trying to use rare? This is the question that we will need to essentially answer for the money that you're trying to introduce to society. The last one is fungibility. Fungibility is a fancy name that simply means that the money needs to be reusable at any point for the same value without discrimination, essentially. So that's what fungibility is. If I have a $20 bill, is it the same $20 bill that my neighbor has, for example? This is what fungibility means. Okay, so now I kind of explained everything. I'm just going to recap everything, the properties of money that I just explained. So durability, remember, this is like gold. Gold is a very durable material. It's not going to decay. That's what durability means. It's a good money. If it doesn't decay, it's a good money. Divisibility, it's basically, are you able to divide the money into smaller units? That's what divisibility is. Portability is the money portable? Is it something that is lightweight, that you can literally carry everywhere you go? Acceptability is where you are able to trade with that money anywhere you go. Is it widely accepted? Scarcity means that it's rare. If somebody can create this money whenever they want, then the value of the money that you're trying to introduce to society completely goes down over time because somebody else is able to make it. So that's not a good money to use because it loses its value. All right. So fungibility means that is $1 bill the same as the next dollar bill? That's what fungibility means. Okay. So those are basically the interesting properties of money. Now the types of money, there are various types of money. Essentially, the fiat money, that's the paper bills and the coins that are issued by the governments, as you know them already, and they are accepted as a medium of exchange. The representative money is basically a commodity, like gold, for example. Actually, it's a representation of gold, I'm sorry, but not the gold. It's just a paper, for example, representation of the gold. It shows that you own a certain amount of gold, but it doesn't show the actual gold. That's what representative money is. Commodity money is the actual gold, the gold and the silver. That is the physical money that has the actual value in and of itself. That's what we call commodity money. You have to understand that Bitcoin is a commodity money, but we will also tackle this issue a little later in this course. So this is an example of the representative money that existed throughout times, and basically that used to be used in the United States as basically a voucher that certifies that the owner owns the actual underlying asset, like silver or gold. Okay, gunpowder was a commodity. It's used to be served as a commodity because it was actually rare, and there were many commodities that were used as money, and gold was one of them. But they were not all the same, as you can imagine. Commodity money, representative money, and fiat money are completely different, but not so much. But commodity money is really what you're after because it is the essence of the value. It holds the essence of the entire value. Now, there nowadays, ever since the new this new era, since the early 2000s, for example, there were a few digital currencies that were starting to emerge. Okay, you have to think that the money that we were used to using prior to central banking, I would say, prior to maybe a little bit more specific, prior to uh, the late 90s and early 2000, for example, there were we were starting to move away from the from from uh, from the money traditionally as we used to know it in a physical way, and we were moving a little bit into electronic currencies due to many inventions. Primarily the digital banking system using the internet. We were basically moving into an era where you could control and manipulate money using the internet, all digitally. So those were some sort of different type of ways to understand the money that we are using. It evolved into electronic currencies. Cryptocurrencies are also another type of electronic currencies. There are digital versions of the money that we are using currently. That's what cryptocurrencies are. They allow you to do the same things that traditional money allows you to do, buy and sell things, but they just allow you to do this online via a digital payment rails, such as Visa, MasterCard. Those are the payment processors that process money online, okay, on the internet. So there are a few types of infrastructures that allow that money to flow through the internet. Most people don't care too much about this, but it's very important to understand that the money that is using in a digital way is using payment rails. Okay, if you're using cash, that's just hand to hand. That is not using any particular payment rails. It is from person to person, and it's very easy. Now, the card networks are another type of money starting in the late or early 90s, where the banking cards starting to emerge, and they started to help facilitate the transfer of funds from person to person, or from institutions to institutions, or merchants to merchants. And they were really smoothing the edges when it comes to the speed of the actual uh, purchasing experience. Now, digital wallets take it a step further. They are only online accounts that allow the users to really store and manage their electronic or digital money and make payments by transferring funds to their account or to the recipient's account. Um, Central bank digital currencies, it's a new term that you may not be familiar with, but they are a digital versions of a country's fiat currencies controlled by the central bank. You need to understand that that is a totally controlled money that will allow a central bank, if approved, that will allow a central bank to actually being implemented. A stable coin is a different type of money as well, uh, fairly new as well. Um, that is a digital currency that basically allow the user to make transactions using a token that is designed to maintain a stable value relative to an asset like the dollar. So basically, Tether is an example of a stable coin. It's designed to maintain that $1 to one token peg. All right, and cryptocurrencies, you probably are here because you've heard of cryptocurrencies. So essentially, we will get to talk a little bit deeper about this in multiple chapters after this one. But in this particular chapter, we will simply be happy to understand that they are a type of digital currency that is that 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 essentially is trying to become decentralized, and that is governed by rules, but without having a centralized authority to issue the cryptocurrency, such as a government or a central bank. Okay, so it's simply controlled by the users themselves. That's who controls the cryptocurrency market if it's decentralized. Okay, all right. So, as you can see, the common denominator in all of these digital currencies and physical or traditional currencies are the intermediary. Okay, it is essentially the best way that humans knew how to create and use money, and now um, there is an appointed um, Federal Reserve uh, chairman that essentially controls the issuance of money for society in the goal of hopefully helping and benefit society. And unfortunately, there are consequences that were completely disregarded by the central banks all around the world. And the problem is that it prevents, those intermediaries such as the central bank or banking or a banking branch, for example, they prevent um, anybody else outside of that group of central bankers to control the money supply, and it concentrates their power inside of the central bank. Okay, so that's basically the main point of the intermediaries. Okay, so basically, uh, decentralized currencies, however, they have an ultimate goal. It is to facilitate transactions in a very secure way without relying on trust. That that was the main goal of a digital currency. If the digital currency can do that efficiently and effectively, then you could say and argue that that digital currency is actually a a better a better medium of exchange, um, a better money, I would say. Now, the last piece here is going to discuss a little bit about the psychology, the psychology of money, and essentially, we're going to start talking about scarcity, time preference, and trade-offs. This is a very important section because um, imagine that you are in a stranded desert and you only have one bottle of water left. You are thirsty and you're desperate for a drink, but you also know that you'll need the water to survive until you can find more. Right? This is pretty much a classic example of scarcity. If you have a limited resource and you have to make a choice, a very crucial choice on how to use it, it's a very difficult situation to be in if you catch my drift here. Essentially, you have to make a very strong decision that will have severe consequences into many different aspects of your life. So that's what we're talking about here. Okay, so you may need to make decision A, for example. I'm gonna just drink a little bit of water until it's gone. It will help me kind of stretch my energy. Or you could think that, you know what, that's gonna be pointless. I will simply need to just drink the water right then and there and hope that it will last me enough, give me enough energy to keep looking for the next water. Those are the decisions that you probably will need to make financially. Okay, so this is what we call the psychology of money. You have to make a very tough decisions in your life to be able to find the best way to achieve your goal. Okay, and scarcity is that thing in the middle of that decision making process that affects our choices, and it will also um, choose an outcome for us essentially, right? So we have to improve our decision making process. Okay, this is um, a little chart that kind of shows you that if you pick one side, there are pros and cons, and if you pick another side, there are also pros and cons. So you have to kind of judge based on many different factors which option is the best for your individual life, right? So, two types of scarcity. There is a human-made scarcity, that is a centralized scarcity. So those are basically things that are limited edition, bags, things like that, rare sports cards, um, things like that. These can be easily replicated or counterfeited. Okay, and the next different type of scarcity is a natural scarcity. That is basically a decentralized scarcity, such as salt, shales, and precious metals like gold. Basically, they are harder to counterfeit. Natural scarcity in money is what you pretty much desire. Okay, the main difference between those two is control. Who has the control? It's very important for people to understand. All right, so centralized scarcity, that is control. It perpetuates poverty because that is the same model of money engineering that the central banking of the world have chosen without any ways to turn back around. Okay, now the last piece, and in my humble opinion, this is the most important piece. It's called the time preference. Time preference is essentially the idea that kind of people, they make a certain type of decisions for a purpose of achieving a better outcome now rather than later. That's what time preference is, and it's vice versa. Okay, so are you picking to put all your efforts into now, achieving a goal for now, or are you saving that same effort to be able to reuse that effort a little later down the road, but to only to because you want to reap the more benefits than you spending that energy now. Okay, so that's pretty much what we call time preference. If you have a low time preference, that means you are able to wait for a long time to be able to achieve greater results. If you have a high time preference, it simply means that you have the you have you don't have the ability to wait for a long time to to reap the benefits. You are, however, you are trying to maximize using all your time and energy to acquire your to reach your goal now rather than saving your energy to reach it later. For you, you value now more than later. That's what the time preference is. It's a very important concept. It really brings the idea of opportunity cost. It helps you determine what you value the most, um, and actually design your life around what you value the most. That's what time preference is. All right. Now, essentially, we are the time preference is really what what will help you manage the money that you have. It will dictate how you are trying to manage the money that you have, and essentially, this is what Bitcoin allows us to review, right? So in this chapter, we really explore the fundamental concept of money. We discussed what money is, the different types, the different properties of money, the different functions of money, and the different types, correct? So that's essentially the psychology of money, all right? As well as discussing things like time preference and trade-offs. Okay, so this is simply a foundation to be able to build on top of. And if you have any particular question that you feel I've missed here, please feel free to drop them down in the comment section, and I will be so happy to tackle this and respond back to you. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Signing out. Thank you.